Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It is Thursday, September 12th today, and I'm doing a little video to catch up on a few transits that are perfecting right now, which I feel like we should spend a moment to discuss. Okay, so I'm going to put the chart up on the screen so that everybody can see it and I can point out exactly what we're talking about. All right, so today what I want to look at is the fact that we have two transits that are just perfecting simultaneously. One is Mars's square to Jupiter from Virgo to Sagittarius, and the other one is going to be Mercury's conjunction with Venus. So here's Mars at 1622 Virgo, just passing through a square, just separating from the square to Jupiter at 1604 Sagittarius. The other thing that's happening is Mercury at 2737 Virgo is conjoining with Venus at 2758. They're almost exactly together. That's going to be happening in the course of the next day. And then those planets are going to switch signs and jump into Libra together, which I'll track in another video as well. So let's start off by talking about Mars in Virgo square to Jupiter in Sagittarius. A simple way of understanding any sign in astrology, right? I just made my Mars in Virgo video, so this is fresh in my mind. Mars in Virgo planets in profile episode. I'm finally updating planets in profile. There's like 4 of them today, so I'll be putting those out over the next week or so. At any rate, Mars in Virgo, right? A simple way to understand signs from the standpoint of ancient astrology is to figure out what is the planet's nature, and then what does it want, what does it desire, and then how does the host of the sign that it's in this case, Mercury rules Virgo, provide for the planet, which again, in this case is Mars. So what does Mars want? Violence, cutting, action. It is the archetype of battle, victory, as well as death, courage. So that's Mars in a nutshell. Now, Mars is going to want those things. Mars is going to do those things. Then we have to say, okay, well, and how does Mercury in Virgo in particular, like this double-bodied mercurial, earthy, feminine sign, how does that sign, that temple, and its host, Mercury, provide? So, for example, a very simple way of understanding this is like, let's say, again, Mars wants war, battle, competition, etc. Then what does it get when it is paired up with Mercury? It gets a war of words, right? It gets a war of ideas or thoughts. So you have very famous wordsmiths like Ernest Hemingway with Mars in Virgo, or Susan Sontag, a famous literary critic, or even Joan Rivers, all Mars and Virgo personalities. So the critic, or the writer, or the wordsmith, the minimalist in the case of Ernest Hemingway. But also, interestingly, you have this weird theme of like messengers and martyrs, right? Mercury the messenger and Mars the martyr, or the warrior who dies in battle for a cause. So for example, one of the famous rectified charts of Jesus Christ, Mars in Virgo. Maybe that's not the real chart, but it's funny that it lands there anyway. On an archetypal level, it matches. Joan of Arc, Mars in Virgo, warrior, missionary, martyr, messenger. You also have, like Heidegger and Nietzsche, another like philosophical people who are kind of have an edge, but they're very like mercurial, super intelligent, and that's philosophers like Nietzsche and Heidegger as well. So at any rate, you get the idea. Oh, and there's also 2 women who were considered kind of progressive messengers of culture that also had tragedy and death surrounding them, that both had Mars and Virgo, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis and Princess Diana. Both died, both not died, but both had tragedy, death, and violence involving cars, also a Mercury-ruled thing. Princess Diana died in a car accident. Of course, Jackie Kennedy, of course, her husband is assassinated in a moving vehicle. So I'm not suggesting that Mars and Virgo means like, assassinations or death by cars, but notice the motif of both of them are kind of people who are in the government, and they're wives to important, like leaders or whatever, but they have their own kind of feminine messenger quality in their lifetimes. And of course, There's tragedy surrounding them in death and violence, all Mars ruled topics as well. So gives you a feeling for Mars, right? And that's what Mars wants. Square to Jupiter. What do you get when you square it to Jupiter? Jupiter's in his own sign. We don't have to do the combining as much. So we just try to figure out, what does Jupiter want? Well, okay, so Jupiter is like, I want to make things big, and I want to make it maybe bombastic or, arrogant or grandiose, right? Jupiter can do those things. Jupiter might also be about wisdom, sagely wisdom, being an expert, having a bigness. Like when a judge walks into the courtroom and they have their official robes, they carry a Jupiterian presence. Similarly, with the robes of any official post in society that's well respected, it's a Jupiter thing. So you're pairing that together with Mars, and you're getting the sense of kind of like, the amplification and maybe ennoblement of the Mars and Virgo archetype. So what's happening tonight? I think it's tonight, as Mars is just perfecting its square to Jupiter, we're getting the big presidential debate on the Democratic side. They're all going to line up on stage and have a war of words, and it's going to be very stately and proud, and there's going to be a lot of wisdom on display and a lot of slicing, right? That's it. That's the archetype manifesting right now. For example, for me, what did I do today? I think I'm creating like my 6th YouTube video of the day, just trying to get ahead on a bunch of stuff and also trying to get caught up with a bunch of stuff. So it's also like, in terms of me just making a whole bunch of, astrological presentations, sort of astrological Jupiterian, presentations on different things that are going on, right? And there's this sense of like, I got to get it done. I've got the energy to get it done, the will to get it done. I've got to write a bunch of stuff, and then I've got to execute. So that just kind of that work ethic right now, where you can just kind of drive at things and have a good analytical, like if you're editing something, just like a big editing project, things like that. So that's certainly one way that you can look at it. But I mean, look at what else is going on, right? If you just go to any news network and just kind of check out like what's going on there, you have a lot going on in Congress surrounding impeachment, right? And these different impeachment, different procedures that are going on. There it is, the war of words and laws and lawmakers going to battle, right? It's very Mars, Jupiter. So these are just, these are just like little elements, but you can see it like in even in the sporting world as well. In the sporting world recently, like Antonio Brown, he's this famous athlete, Mars, the athlete, has been basically he's been blowing up because of scandal, right? And that's his words on Twitter and a potential sexual assault case and all this stuff. But that's when you see the hubris of the war or the hubris of the athlete. I can do it all. I'm the, Zeus complex starts coming out. So you got to watch for that as well. So anyway, you can see these things in the news. And then the idea is that helps us really to develop a sense of what the archetype looks like. And then we can identify it in our own life. Why identify it in our own life? Because you don't want to get completely carried away with something, right? Like, for example, I'm doing all of this stuff I said today, right? And then tonight I'm going to try to edit and purge probably like 800 gigabytes worth of just backed up crap for like 10 years that I have on a hard drive. And I've been meaning to do a digital purge for a long time, right? So there's that slicing, dicing, cutting, and dealing with a vast pile of like stuff, right? Jupiter, Mars, and Virgo. So you can feel this energy in yourself. And I have had to pace myself, right? I've been taking this digital purge little step at a time because it's this big, massive thing, but I've got to cut it up into small parts. So that's the editing eye of Virgo. That's also why you think about Ernest Hemingway, Mars and Virgo. Makes sense, right? He's the minimalist, but he's also tragedy surrounding his life. He took his life violently. So there's this kind of like terse, Mars and Virgo, it's like every sentence in Hemingway feels, I heard a professor say this once when I was in my MFA program. Every sentence in Hemingway feels like he rested, like he was a hunter, right? Like he hunted something and killed it and then presented it as a, taxidermy or whatever. Like there's this way in which, there's this control and almost like an anger sometimes. And like, you have to be really careful if you've got big projects going on, not to just, kind of go crazy with them. So like today was my big filming day with a bunch of stuff, but this digital purge, I've been having to take it just little piece at a time and just kind of patiently work my way through it. Okay. You can also see big things around athletes. Okay, that's a Mars Jupiter thing. And the other thing to look for is also going to be the kind of prophet energy, right? Again, like the martyr, Joan of Arc, Jesus Christ, like the martyr meets prophet meets teacher, kind of saying something that's more conflicting, coming out, being edgier, being more like when a teacher takes a political stand at a university or something like that, right? So I'm thinking, for example, of what's the guy's name? Jordan. Oh, I can't remember what his name is. Jordan something or another. Let me just look him up. Jordan Reed, I think that's his name. No, that's the football player. What is that guy's name? Jordan. Is it Jordan Peterson? Yes. Okay, it's Jordan Peterson. That's his name. You guys have ever listened to him? He's really brilliant. Unless you're, here's the thing. He has some very controversial takes, and he's very outspoken. And he has a lot of like kind of some could say intellectual arrogance, right? But he's also oftentimes just really blunt and wise, like at the same time. And I've found I like some of his takes, some of them I don't like. And he's really controversial for that reason, where like he's a student of Carl Jung, basically. I mean, for all intents and purposes, like he's a Jungian, which means I have a lot in common with him. But then at times, like I would say probably have like different political views, So, but he's one of those figures is very like, Mars and Virgo, square Jupiter and Sagittarius. I have no idea what's in his birth chart. I've never even seen it before, but he just came to mind suddenly. So you can think about his that just kind of where sage meets like aggressive, or when students on campuses demonstrate because they don't like the speaker that's coming, or the speaker has a debate with the student, that just kind of Mars and Virgo square to Jupiter. And that's again why we're seeing debates tonight. Okay, so that's the first one I wanted to talk about. The next one I want to talk about is Mercury and Venus. So let's put that up on the screen so you can see that there. So Mercury and Venus are getting together right now too. Now Mercury is exalted and in its own domicile, very comfortable in Virgo right now. Meeting with Venus. Okay, first of all, Venus is in her fall, right? But she's about to pop into Libra where she'll be in her dignity. So it's very interesting that Venus is about to take this turn. And I can't help but wonder if this turn that Venus is about to take is not coming as Mercury and Venus conjoin, because then what's going to happen is they're going to flip-flop signs and Venus is going to be empowered, whereas Mercury loses its power, where it's currently in its domicile and in its exaltation in Virgo, flips into Libra, and suddenly Venus is empowered and Mercury is peregrine. This makes me feel like there's something happening right now that is going to greatly improve upon Venus's situation. It could be, for example, that relationships or anything related to relationships, love, romance, friendships, sisters, daughters, women, that if something has been challenging, that a solution or a creative idea might come up pretty soon, because you've got the messenger and the analytic thinker, Mercury, very well dignified, coming to conjoin with its guest. So of course, what that typically would mean is that the two qualities are going to be joined together, and Mercury is going to be very pleasing. Mercury is going to become very pleasing because it's blended with Venus, and Venus is pleasing. Or Venus is going to become very articulate and smart, and that can help Venus if Venus is in any kind of bind or jam right now because of Venus's debility. So these are the kinds of little karmic details that these dignities give us, along with the aspects all the time. People always want to get offended when you start talking about planets in their dignities, and it's really it's not anything to get offended about. The planets don't need our defending; they're gods. They're not ultimately negative or positive. The signs and the dignities are just a way of helping us understand different kinds of planetary combinations, planetary relationships that create specific kinds of karmic dynamics, which subjectively are agreed upon in human experience as either unfortunate or challenging or difficult, even if some good ends up coming out of it, or even if there's good, within it. It's not ever a black and white thing. Or if a planet's in a situation where it's like, it's just rocking, it's really in a happy environment where it's really supported. nonetheless, when a planet, even when a planet is debilitated, as Venus is in Virgo, when its host, Mercury, who's also exalted in Virgo, comes and conjoins with it, it's a good thing because the host takes care of the guest. Even if the guest isn't feeling well or feels a little out of their element in that sign, the host comes along and says, I'll give you the best of what I've got. So this conjunction brings Mercury and Venus together in a nice way. Pleasing speech, artful speech, some kind of innovative solution to a diplomatic problem, the power or oratorical power of women. Like in these debates tonight, I kind of am highly expecting or anticipating that, one of the women will sort of shine. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if Elizabeth Warren, because of that, just that Virgo energy, kind of earthy. She's kind of, the earthy. So at any rate, but then we have, then Venus is going to flip into Libra and Mercury is going to follow. So Venus then suddenly becomes greatly empowered. Again, this just makes me think that if there's been any problems in relationships, diplomacy, style, design, trying to agree on advertising image, trying to agree on what, the style or presentation of something should be, there's quickly going to be agreement. You're going to see a phase of maybe like Mercury negotiating or bargaining and trying to maybe help Venus, and then Venus suddenly becoming empowered. So something is going to flip right here around Venus related things. For example, it would not be surprising to see a woman slightly after this period of time in the next week, say, go up in the polls in the Democratic primaries. It wouldn't be surprising to see something about the role of women or rights or laws related to women or something like that. Women and teachers standing out in the news. Wouldn't be surprising to see some news from the fashion world or around women or daughters, or even the topic of like goddesses or virgins, like that, just kind of that Virgo motif. Virgin goddesses, by the way, in ancient Greek would mean like sort of independent young women who are not like prude or chaste in the sexual sense, but don't belong to anyone or not owned by anyone. So this kind of young woman puella motif, this kind of like Peter Pan for girls, that kind of energy is around right now. And then it's going to shift. Like Venus is going to pop into Libra, and then suddenly you have a very different Venus. Now Venus is in her home sign. She's very elegant, very refined, very classy, very intelligent, sophisticated. And then Mercury comes into that sign and becomes very Venusian, but very airy, light, beautiful, right? Interested in fairness and justice. I wonder if something isn't about to happen around fairness, justice, equality. There's not some shift that's going to happen around the cultural conversation about women, even if it's just a little blip on the radar. It would not surprise me at all, given this dynamic. So you've got some Mercury Venus energy to work with. Great if you're a singer, if you're a songwriter, if you're a creative writer, if you're doing anything that is mental, verbal, articulating, and also concerned with beauty or appearance. So those things can come together. Pleasing speech in general is signified by all of this. So, which I love because I speak, teach, and write for a living. So the past couple of days as these planets have been getting together, it's just been easier to find a flow. And maybe you're noticing that too. Maybe that'll show up for you. It's also easier if you have to make a criticism, you have to do something like edit or prune or pare away at something, even this digital purge that I'm doing. There's just a sense of like happiness that's there in doing things that are more technical or even editorial. You can find like, again, think of like beautifying something by reducing, almost like making something beautiful by taking something out of the equation. That's also a Venus, Mercury in Virgo kind of thing. Okay, well, those planets perfecting right now as we speak. How are they showing up in your life? I'd love to hear your stories. I'd love to hear if any of you have Mars or Venus or Mercury in Virgo natally. How do you deal with that? What's your story been like? And tell me how you end up feeling that these transits show up in the news in the next few days as well, or what you're seeing in the news that might reflect these things. Okay, that's what I've got for you guys. Remember my one-year class in Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It's a class I've been teaching for a long time. Hundreds of students from all over the world. Really excited about my next class that starts on November 16th. check out nightlightastrology.com, go to the certification course tab, and you can find out more information there. I'd love to see some of you in class soon. It's a great way to learn, study astrology with a group of, every class is always a group of awesome people that I end up becoming, a lot of them are like lifelong friends that I've made now. So, all right, we'll see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.